let us understand today Spring framework. What is a Spring? And before going through this, let us see some details now. Like already we are having some struts framework if you remember. So why like I just tell you one thing here. We are having a struts framework, right? Why we should use or why we should go for a Spring? The problem with the struts framework is what? It is just for the web application, right? So struts only represents presentation layer. It is very good with presentation layer of the best application. It never talk about the business layer much, right? So these are the problems basically with the struts framework. It's just for the presentation layer. Now if we talk about the Spring, it's a huge support of the Spring. What I mean here, Spring is having several sub framework. So if we talk about the Spring framework, there are several sub framework we're having. Like one is the AOP, that is aspect oriented programming. Second, it has a support of ORM, object relational mapping, right? And it is have a support for web MVC. We can implement model view controller based web application. It has a support of DAO. Okay, it has a support of Webflow, something like that. And there's a Spring context, several sub framework. There's one concept we are having here, Spring uh, core, or I can say here there's a core container in the Spring we are having, that is also called IOC container. So basically Spring is having one core container, and that core container is what? It is a IOC container. Okay, what it does, it provides you the object reference implicitly in a class during runtime. So you need not to create object. It will provide you the object implicitly, and you can use and you can work with that, right? So you are getting object implicitly. What else? The IOC container is a, I can say, is a principle of software constructions where developers no need to create object from class. Instead of application, get the object from where? From outside the source, like XML file or configuration file. So this guy is giving you some of the object reference from where? From XML file, or I can say some configuration file. Okay, what we are achieving by doing this? We are reducing the coupling in the application. So we are not creating object in applications, we are getting from somewhere. So it is very loose coupling, and if we are having loose coupling in our application, so maintainability will be higher, and it will have a high resolution, I can say, right? Now this guy IOC container uses two interface. Okay, this guy use two interface. One is the bean factory. Second is application context. Application context. This is one interface. So this is one interface and this is again another interface which help us to get object, or it help us to manage the bean in IOC container. So these are the two interfaces we are having, bean and application context. Okay. Now before getting into the details of Spring, I'll just explain the little more about the, like, we are having some com and decom. Let us talk about some of the other component and distributed component in Java which we have. Like in Microsoft, as we know, by using, they are having a concept of com and decom, right? So in C++, I can make a component. In Java also we can make a component, right? In Visual Basic, I can make a component. What is a decom? It is a distributed component, which is a server-side component, right? In Java, our decom is our, or just we can understand this way, there's a one concept of Java beans, right? And there's a enterprise Java beans. There's two things we're having. So if we talk about Java beans, it is not having security, right? Second, it is not having any transaction management, right? So these all are lacking with the Java beans. So it is without security and transaction management. While we talk about if EasyB, this is having a good security. It is having also a transaction management, right? But for developing EasyB application, or if we talk about EasyB component or distributed component, by using EasyB, we have to call lot of callback methods like EasyB create, EasyB post create, EasyB set entity context, right? So there are a number of callback methods which we need to call, and so it needs to call some callback method, right? One, it needs to call some remote interface, it needs to call some home interface, right? And these are the things which led complexity. So developing a distributed component using EasyB is somehow very complex. Now to come out this problem or this complexity, we have a Spring here. So with the help of a Spring, we can easily develop distributed component. As we know that Spring is an open source lightweight, okay, framework that allows Java developers to build simple, reliable, and scalable enterprise application. So Spring is not only for enterprise application. Spring you can use for developing a standalone application. You can use for applet based application. You can use for web application, and you can also use for enterprise application. So it is very much flexible, and yeah. So, and there's the one major advantage of the Spring framework is what? It is the layered architecture. Okay. And the modules has been divided into several pieces, like there are 6 7 modules are there. Okay, and as we know that main core of a Spring is IOC module, inversion of control, where we are getting the object on demand. We are not supposed to create object, right? And there's some other advantage I can say. Spring enables POSIX programming. Okay, and dependency injection and inversion of control simplifies ZDBC concept, and it is open source, so there is no vendor lock-in. Okay, so these are the major advantages we are having with the Spring framework.